Live from somewhere in Children's Minnesota's medical doctor building. We have a really good friend of ours from the Sims Center, and she's brought a very special guest with her. Please say hello to Samreen. Hello, Samreen.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning. And who do we have with you? Who is this? This is a doctor? Is this somebody that works at the hospital? Who's that next to you?
Well, she's a mini-me, so she's almost a doctor, probably. This is my daughter, Zahra.
Zahra, hello. Welcome to the show. Why don't you just kind of lay it out and tell us a little bit about your position and what you do at the hospital?
Sure, yeah. So I work at the simulation center where you've had people from my team before, where we use little babies like dolls and mannequins to help all our healthcare providers, like our doctors and nurses, learn all the things they need to know so they can take care of kids in the best way possible. So some of our babies can cry and they can turn blue, and we just get to practice so that when we take care of our kids, we're just completely ready to do it.
Awesome. Yes. And it's a real, you run like a training ground, I guess you could say in some senses. Well, we're so happy that you're here. But one of the reason why we're here today is that Ramadan is starting up, I believe, within the next, is it tomorrow? Is it tonight or tomorrow?
Today. Yeah. So we look for the moon. Hopefully Zara and I will go out after sunset or right around sunset to see if we sight the moon. And if we can see that tiny sliver of a moon, the first, beginning of a new moon, then we start fasting tomorrow. And if we don't, then we start on Saturday.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
I have some questions. Now, I think that there's been, I don't think a lot of people know some details about Ramadan. And I think at least, you might even be able to say that people are sometimes a little afraid to ask about things they don't know about, and you also there's an insecurity. It's certainly that I have sometimes, like, I don't want to seem like insensitive that I don't know anything, but I think as a culture and a society to get to know each other, we have to let go of our own issues like that, and people to be also open to receiving whatever question, because the main purpose is to understand and learn about each other more. Isn't that true? Did I say something wise or good? Or...
Well put.
Yes.
Well put, dude.
I don't know what happened to me. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. It's scary not knowing about things, but I think the more we learn, the more we realize how similar things are. And so in Ramadan, which, that sounds like a fancy word, and you're like, well, what does that even mean? Well, it's really just a time that Muslims across the world, people who believe in the religion of Islam, we fast. The fasting, so you've heard of fasting, right? So people fast for a lot of reasons.
Like a diet. It's like when they don't eat.
Exactly, where we don't eat. And so for us, who does that? For us, for the month of Ramadan, so it's 29 or 30 days, we don't eat or drink anything, even water, from dawn, which is sunrise, just before sunrise, all the way to sunset. But the other part of this, which is a little different than just the diet, is that it's not just refraining from food. We also try to avoid disagreements and try to avoid things like, arguing with people, things like that. So if your little brother is bothering you, we try not to get in fights and really build up our willpower during this time. So And then that helps us to kind of understand how other people around the world might be feeling when they can't afford food or don't have food, or even here, like kids in the hospital. It's really hard being in the hospital, and there are times where you're not allowed to eat. And so with kids like Zahra or adults being able to fast during Ramadan, it helps us to develop that empathy and try to understand how are those kids feeling, so we can better help them.
So you mentioned being able to understand better how kids in the hospital might feel. Do Muslims still have to fast if they're sick?
No. So again, you wouldn't go on a diet if you were sick, right? And so I think in Ramadan, it's not meant to be hard. So if you have any medical issues like diabetes or are not feeling well, you don't have to fast. But then that spirit again, if you're able to, if you can't fast, then they recommend donating money to feed those that maybe don't have food, so that you can feel that empathy towards those that might not have food. So for example, last year here at Children's, our children's community actually helped to raise almost $3,000 to fund children's matter boxes, where food is put into these boxes, shelf stable food, so like canned goods, cereals, like those Frosted Flakes, for families who might not be able to get food. Either they're here trying to get care in the hospital or can't afford it. So yeah.
All right. So Zahra, you said you're in 7th grade. How old do you have to be, or how old are you when you start practicing fasting during Ramadan?
Well, I'm 12, and I don't have to fast yet, but we do, since I want to fast, we still wake up before sunrise, and we make sure to eat something and drink a lot of water. And then, but we also have to be sure of the time and the sun's position outside, because as soon as the sun rises, we have to stop eating and drinking, and we can only finish whatever is already in our mouth.
Oh.
Sometimes she stuffs her face right at the last minute.
Because sometimes I wake up late. It's also in the morning, you just woke up and you don't really eating that early in the morning.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So, just here's a question kind of off script a little bit. So as soon as that sun goes down, are you just like, oh yeah, let's go get some some wings, let's go to Subway, get the foot long, let's do this. Or, I mean, how does that work? I mean, because you're fasting for a long time, because it's also now the days are longer, obviously, the sun is coming up and it's going down later. So we're talking a long time. So what do you do after sunset?
Well, there's different cultures. I know that Somalis, they eat their whole meal. We always break our fast with dates and water. And then for Somalis and some other cultures, they eat their whole meal before going to pray, the sunset prayer. But for us, for other cultures, we break our fast with the dates and the water, we pray, and then we eat our meal.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. All right, cool. So, do people? You still have to work during the day, right? You have to go about your business as usual. But don't you get tired? You don't have any. We're talking about, putting the old protein in the bod and getting some carbs, that you can burn, fuel. Do you get tired? And does it make you uncomfortable at all during the day?
A little hangry, maybe?
You get some hangry?
It really depends on the work. Like for me, I have school, and for a lot of Islamic schools, they'll change the schedule and the workload a little bit to make it easier for those who are fasting. Like for my current school, our school ends 2 hours earlier than it normally would. And although a lot of people feel like that makes it easier, it makes it a shorter day so we can rest more, you can also think of it in the way that doing the work at school can also distract you and pass the time faster while you're actually doing something productive. So it really depends on the work. So there's things like that where it'll help you pass the time faster and you don't get too tired out too easily. But there are other types of work where you will get tired out more easily.
Sure, for sure. You mentioned different cultures. So is it fair to say that within the Muslim community, there's different ways that people celebrate Ramadan, and how are some of those different from others?
Yeah, I think that was a great point, Sarah. That there's Muslims across the world, right? So we're from Pakistan, but there's Muslims, like you mentioned, from Somalia. What other places? Are there other differences you can think of?
Well, yeah, there's Indians, and there's a lot of places.
Yeah. And I think that one consistency is that most people do break their fast with dates, but then the foods can vary so much from what people eat, I think, which is quite fun, actually.
Because there's so many different people. There's Indians and Pakistanis and Arabs and Somalians, and they all have different foods.
Yes, we do.
Right.
Foods.
What about Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I would say mostly it's pretty consistent, though. We wake up early and we eat. We want to stay hydrated. We break our fast and we pray, and we really try to come together as a community and do giving. So a lot of charity acts, and it's pretty consistent across the world, even though, cultures vary so much, which is kind of cool. It really shows how connected we are as humanity, right? As you started this show to say, it's kind of hard when you think about things that you may not be familiar with, but when you really think about it, we're all kind of the same, and we want to help each other, and we want to make sure everybody has food.
Yes, right. And before I move on, I have a couple more questions, but I wanted to throw it out to Mr. B, Mr. Dubs, or I should mention too that anybody can call in too at 55020. If you are at the hospital and if you have any questions for our guests today, you can go ahead and do that. Also, if you're calling in and watching from home, which we hope you are too, hi from all of us to you back at the hospital and in your home self-quarantining. 612-460-7827 is the number that you can call in anytime throughout the show. Okay, so Mr. B, Mr. Dubs, how about, and Timmy G, do you guys have any questions, or do you have anything that you guys want to ask?
I think you did a really good job covering that, dude. That's probably one of the best interviews I've ever seen you do. Well done.
Oh, well, thanks. Actually, what you don't see is that Samreen has written a script for me, and I'm reading that.
Oh, I see.
Oh.
Now I get it.
I was gonna, Samreen, I was gonna try to get by and be like, oh, thank you very much, take the credit, but no, I'm reading questions. But we did go through it. Actually, we did talk about it, and this was one of my questions that when we were discussing this a week ago or two, that here's something. How does someone like me participate with you in being from a different culture, etc. Obviously, I don't celebrate it, but that's not to say I can't wish you, like, I don't know, how do I play along with you? What do I say? Happy Ramadan? Do I say Happy Ramadan?
There's a lot of things you can say. You can say Happy Ramadan or Ramadan Kareem or Ramadan Mubarak. They all mean the same thing. It means Happy Ramadan and have a good Ramadan. You could also try not to be eating a lot in front of us. We know that you have to eat, but just eat the cake somewhere else.
It's good to know.
Yes, that is a good. Yeah, actually, that's a really good thought. You wouldn't think about that, but yeah, be mindful of that. Yes, Mr. Wizard.
No, that's great. No, I think I've heard or seen the signs in people's yards, blessed Ramadan. Is that the preferred kind of way to say Happy Ramadan, I guess?
Yeah, I think any of those would do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, Happy Ramadan, blessed Ramadan. And I think it's easier to say that than to try to say Ramadan Kareem, but any of those work.
Easy to remember.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so we're starting here. If you see the moon tonight, it starts. Otherwise, if you don't, then it just starts on Saturday. That's right.
Yep. Yeah, because if we don't see it tonight, we know the moon's coming out, so we assume it's coming out the next day. And that's also how it's going to end. And so at the end of Ramadan, it's actually a big night. We celebrate. We go out to look for the moon, and that's how we know the next day is going to be Eid, which is going to be our first holiday of the year, which is celebrating the end of Ramadan. So yeah.
And what's that like?
Oh man, a lot of food.
Oh, I was gonna say.
Just eat sugar all day.
Tell me about that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about food and all the stuff before you guys start fasting. And before we actually get to that question, what we can do is take a phone call. Let's do that. Let's take our phone call. Let's say hello to our caller on the line. Hi, friend. What's up? What's your first name?
How you doing?
Hi, what's your first name? Is this Abdu?
Yeah, Abdu, the dude.
Hey, Abdu. This is to explain to everybody. Abdu is one of Samreen's coworkers in the Sim Center.
Yes.
Who
Friend
also
of Star Studio.
is friend of Star Studios, has been on the show. Also used to work at Volunteer Services, so he's multi-talented employee and
Master of
Master of many things. Yes, Abdu. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I definitely, I'm enjoying the show. I'm watching it. I'm having fun. So,
Great.
but I have a question.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, as a kid, when you're trying to learn how to fast, obviously you can't fast the whole time of fasting. So can you fast all the way to maybe 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever time you think you can no longer handle the hunger and break your fast? Is that okay?
What a great question.
Well,
That's good,
there
yeah.
are things people should usually try and fast as long as they can. And I know there are some people who also think they can do, okay, today I'll do a half fast, which is they'll fast half of the day and then they'll break it if they think they won't be able to last much longer.
Yeah, they just so it builds you. You can build up to it, right? Maybe add an hour a day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure. Okay, that's a great question, Abdu. Thank you very much.
You. All right, thank you.
Thanks for watching, Abdu.
Yeah, bye-bye. No problem.
Awesome. Oh, cool. That was a great question. I'm glad he called in. And Tim, did you have a question? Were you waving hi? Okay.
And it may have been answered. I'm trying to pay attention. You said you're 12 years old?
Yes.
You're 12 years old, and you said that it's not, you don't have to at 12, but is there a certain age where you it isn't, you don't have to?
Yeah, I think that it's, once they're mature enough, I think the big thing is, kids are growing and we think about the nutrients they need. And dude, you mentioned proteins and getting hangry. So I think once kids hit puberty, they're expected to fast. But I think it really is kind of individual decisions and parents kind of making sure that the kids are going to be okay and can stay healthy.
I also think there are some families who help their kids from a very young age start practicing fasting, and then at a certain age they expect, okay, you should really try to maybe fast this whole month now. They expect their kids. I know there's some people who say sometimes age 7 and sometimes older, like 13. So it kind of depends on your culture and yeah.
Sometimes we have a big party after the first fast, which is exciting.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is, I don't know if this is the appropriate word for the culture, but so there is grace in younger children until it's a learned process. So it's something that they work towards to be able to do, because like you said, it's much more internal than it is just food. There's a much bigger deal than just whether or not you're eating or not. It's there's so much more that goes into it. So it isn't like a forced, I'm sure some families are more forceful than others, and more demanding than others, but it's truly about just learning the process and enjoying that process and learning from it, right? Not you're going to be in big trouble later if you don't do this now type thing. Okay.
I think you hit it on the head. Yeah, the grace piece is exactly on the head. I think it's about what you get from it and what you give during this month, rather than just not eating. So
what a beautiful holiday.
Not to be like, I'm just not going to eat today because I don't want to.
Who says that?
Samreen, I wasn't going to address this, but I feel like I should. In the script that I have here, I'm looking at the end of it, and you're asking me, have I ever had a date? And I just wanted to say that's kind of a personal question, and I don't feel. Let me double check.
We want to know. The world. Have you ever had a date?
Everybody wants to know, but Zara, you want to say what kind of a date are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about the ones that grow on trees.
Ooh, yes,
okay.
Silly dude.
Well, now I feel awkward because the question was, have you ever had a date? And then you ask, would you like to try one?
Well, if we had dates, we don't with us today, but dates are actually very traditional. It's a fruit, and it's actually really high in natural sugar. And so it's nice after fasting all day to be able to break your fast with that, because it kind of gives you that boost, right? You asked earlier, do you just start eating, or what do you do when you break your fast? It's a nice food that when you break your fast with that, you don't feel like you just need to start stuffing your face with foot-long Subways,
Right. Well, let's talk about that now to wrap up our conversation. Let's say now we're at the end. I would love to have you maybe come back when Ramadan is now at the end, or after you've ended it. I want to talk about this party a little bit and this food. Now, what kind? I show up to the party, and what am I going to see?
We're going to invite you to our party, dude.
Okay.
Nice.
So people dress up. So we start our day with, well, do you want to talk about it, Sarah? Okay, so we start our day with prayer, actually. So we get really dressed up, and some of our, it's recommended to wear a new outfit, clean, new, and usually it's pretty fancy in most cultures. And then we gather. Actually, it's a huge gathering, which this year we may not be able to do, but typically it's a huge gathering. Often it's outdoors if it can be, although in Minnesota it depends what time of year it is because you can't sit down in the snow. But and then we pray together. And then we all go home, and typically it's with your families. So think of it as an extended Christmas dinner. Like we just pretty much, meet with your family and friends throughout the day, eat a lot of different kinds of food.
I know there's definitely some people who just sleep a lot because in Ramadan you shouldn't also be just sleeping and watching TV because that's not very good. So I know there's some people who sleep all day, but there's also a lot of people who go out and eat a lot of sugar and have fun with their families.
There's also a tradition to give kids gifts, and so it's either money or gifts. So there's some gift exchanging. There's just kind of a big festive day, and some countries actually celebrate it for 3 days. So very extended Christmas dinner, where it's a lot of celebrating, meeting with family for a couple of days. So.
Okay, I have to ask this. Okay, now Ramadan is now over, let's say. What is the thing that you're looking forward to the most to eat again?
What do you think? Probably cake.
Good answer. Good answer.
Yeah.
I have a question that I don't think we covered. Does the Ramadan month move throughout the year? Or each year?
Oh, that's a great question. It really confuses people. Like my friends are, wait a minute, but you fasted in October last time. It does because we're based on the lunar calendar. So as we talked about earlier, sighting the moon. And so it moves back about 10 days every year. So when I was growing up, and which is a little harder for Zahra now, when I was growing up, it was in the winter. So I just had to fast till like 4 p.m. It was great. But now the fasts are longer because it's moved into the summer. And so it's some of the longest fasts this year and last year of going all the way to sunset at 8 o'clock. It's much harder.
Great question, Mr. B. Well done.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Mr. B. Way to go. So I just wanted to end our little segment with Samreen and Zahara, that I would like to say, Blessed Ramadan to you both.
Yeah, Blessed Ramadan.